SpaceX has bagged a $255 million contract to launch NASA's Nancy Grace Roman Space Telescope mission on a Falcon Heavy rocket. The $4 billion Roman Space Telescope, designed to settle essential questions in the areas of dark energy, exoplanets, and infrared astrophysics, is the next flagship astrophysics mission after the James Webb Space Telescope. The telescope was previously known as the Wide Field Infrared Survey Telescope, but it was later renamed in honor of Dr. Nancy Grace Roman, a driving force behind the Hubble Space Telescope. The Roman telescope features a 2.4-meter primary mirror, the same size as Hubble's. However, Roman will have a huge field of view, with its wide-angle lens able to see an area of the sky about 100 times larger than what Hubble could see. The telescope will be equipped with two instruments, the Wide Field Instrument and the Coronagraph Instrument. The Wide Field Instrument is a 300-megapixel infrared camera that will allow scientists to detect faint infrared light from across the universe. The coronagraph will allow astronomers to directly image planets in orbit around other stars by significantly reducing the glare from the host star. Now in development, the telescope, with a mass of about 4,200 kilograms, will go skywards between October 2026 and May 2027 from NASA's Kennedy Space Center in Florida. The telescope will operate from the second Earth-Sun Lagrange point, a region of space about 1.5 million kilometers from the Earth. That is the same location where the James Webb Space Telescope and several other astrophysics missions operate. Roman's barrel-like shape will help block out unwanted light from the Sun, Earth, and Moon, and the spacecraft's distant location will help keep the instruments cool. The telescope is expected to last in space for 5 years, and the mission could be extended for 5 more years. NASA has set aside 3 days in late August and early September for the Artemis 1 moon mission. The agency announced on July 20 that they are targeting 29 August, 2 September, and 5 September for the launch. Meeting those deadlines is contingent on final preparations proceeding as planned, as well as the cooperation of the weather at the launch site at Kennedy Space Center. The Space Launch System rocket is currently parked inside the vehicle assembly building, and NASA is presently working to fix a liquid hydrogen leak in the tail service mast umbilical, discovered during the 4th wet dress rehearsal test. According to NASA, the stacked SLS rocket and Orion spacecraft will be transported to the launch pad on August 18. Each of the 3 launch options would allow the uncrewed Orion spacecraft to fly into lunar orbit for several weeks before returning to Earth and splashing down in the Pacific Ocean. The mission is a test flight to validate the SLS rocket's capabilities and demonstrate Orion's ability to return from the Moon and survive high-velocity re-entry into Earth's atmosphere. If SLS arrives at the launch pad in August but does not launch by September 5 due to weather or some other technical issue, the vehicle would have to be returned to the assembly building for flight termination system servicing and reset of the clock. In that case, the next launch window is from October 17 to 31. US-based private companies Relativity Space and Impulse Space Propulsion have announced a collaboration to launch the first commercial mission to Mars in 2024. Relativity Space would provide the mission's launch vehicle, the reusable and 3D printed Terran-R rocket, while Impulse Space would provide the Mars cruise vehicle and Mars lander. Designed as the world's first fully reusable, entirely 3D printed rocket, Terran-R is pioneering a new class of reusable launch vehicles that will open new opportunities for space exploration and scientific research. Please see the link in the description to watch my previous video that goes in depth on Terran-R. Following the liftoff from the Cape Canaveral Space Force Station, the Terran rocket would send Impulse's payload on a trans-Mars injection orbit. After more than a half-year journey through interplanetary space, the cruise vehicle will inject the entry capsule into the proper landing trajectory. The entry capsule will use a heat shield and parachute to safely slow down and deploy the Mars lander. The lander will then perform a propulsive landing on the red planet, completing the first commercial payload delivery to another planet's surface. The lander would be about the size of NASA's InSight lander, but will be lighter. It will not have solar panels and will only operate until its batteries run out. If this commercial Mars mission succeeds, it could open a new market in which institutions, companies, and national space agencies could send payloads to the red planet at an affordable cost. China's Long March 5B rocket, which will send the Wentian lab module to the country's under-construction Tiangong space station, has been transported to the launch pad at the Wentian spacecraft launch site on July 18. The 17.9-meter long and 4.2-meter wide Wentian module is set to launch on July 24. Hours after the launch, Wentian will rendezvous and dock with the Tiangong core module of the station, orbiting around 390 kilometers above the Earth. The module will then be transpositioned from the forward docking port to a side port, where it will remain and be prepared for operation. The 22,000 kilograms Wentian module is designed to provide a pressurized environment for astronauts to conduct science experiments, as well as navigation avionics, propulsion, and orientation control for the Tiangong space station. It also features an airlock cabin, which will serve as the primary exit and entry point for extravehicular activities. Wentian is also equipped with 30-meter-long solar arrays, which will increase the power available to Tiangong. 3 astronauts from the Shenzhou 14 mission, who are currently aboard the Tiangong core module, will help set up the Wentian module in orbit. To make room for Wentian's arrival, on July 17, the Tiangong 3 cargo spacecraft separated from the orbiting station's front docking port and re-entered the Earth's atmosphere. The spacecraft, launched in September 2021, delivered 6 tons of goods to Tiangong. The Wentian launch is planned to be one of 2 modules to be sent into orbit this year. In October, China will launch another experiment hosting module called Wentian. The arrival of the module will complete the planned T-shaped Tiangong space station. Now, let's discuss some of the major Starship updates from the past week. SpaceX is in the midst of preparing Starship-24 for the inaugural orbital launch. On Monday, July 18, SpaceX performed the first ever spin prime test of Ship-24. For those who don't know, a spin prime test typically involves using high-pressure gas to spin the engine turbines for a few seconds to test the plumbing. A similar test of Booster 7 a week ago ended in a fiery explosion, forcing SpaceX to return the booster to the build site for inspection. Elon Musk then stated that they would not conduct a spin prime test with all 33 engines at the same time in the future. The test on Monday involved only the inner 3 sea-level optimized Raptor engines of the ship. 2 more spin prime tests were conducted on Thursday, July 21. The first test took place at 1:20 p.m. local time, and the second followed an hour later. Both tests made use of all 6 engines on the ship. The 4th and 5th spin prime tests occurred on Thursday afternoon. The first was a single-engine test, followed by a double-engine test. More than an hour before the first spin prime test on Wednesday, teams tested the Raptor engine's fuel igniters. Recently, during an interview with Tim Dodd, the everyday astronaut, Elon Musk stated that SpaceX is no longer using torch igniters to ignite the Raptor engines, but he refused to reveal what type of ignition technique the engines currently employ.
For Raptor 1, we have torch igniters in the main chamber, but Raptor 2 has no torch igniters in the main chamber. So you can see it's much cleaner around the chamber area.
How's it light then?
Well, that's a secret sauce.
The next round of Starship-24 testing, most likely static fire tests, will happen as early as Monday, July 25. Super Heavy Booster 7 inspection and repair work are ongoing at the build site. As of July 20, 13 Raptor engines had been removed from the booster and moved to one of the production tents. More engines might be removed from the booster in the coming days. Some of the removed engines have recently left Starbase, most likely for repair at the SpaceX's McGregor rocket development facility. If those engines pass qualification tests after repairs at McGregor, they will be returned to Starbase for installation on future Starship or Super Heavy prototypes. If Booster 7 is found to be mostly in great shape after inspection, teams will replace the damaged engines of the vehicle with Raptors that were previously assigned to Booster 8. Once all the Raptors are installed and Booster 7 is fully ready, it will be rolled out to the launch site to continue the ground test campaign. The recent Booster 7 anomaly will almost certainly push back the orbital flight test by a couple of weeks. If everything goes as planned and as quickly as possible, we can expect a launch in early September. As most of us are aware, SpaceX is planning to deploy several Starlink satellites into orbit during the upcoming orbital test flight. Teams were spotted loading some of the second-generation Starlink satellites into the custom-built Starlink integration box on July 18. The satellites are 7 meters long and 3 meters wide, and according to Elon Musk, Starship is the only vehicle currently capable of delivering them into orbit.
Yeah, so we need Starship to work and to fly frequently, or Starlink 2 will be stuck on the ground.
The box, which has a short but wide door at the bottom, will be lifted up to Ship-24's payload bay in the near future to load the satellites into the vehicle. And then, during the test flight, those satellites will be deployed into orbit using a PEZ dispenser-like mechanism, which has already been installed inside the ship. On July 19, after loading several Starlink satellites, the integration box was transported from the construction site to a nearby satellite processing facility for further operations. On Tuesday, the Booster 7.1 test tank, which had been stationed at the launch site for several weeks, underwent a structural stress test. The test began by filling the test tank with subcooled liquid nitrogen. After the tank was completely filled, 20 cables running from the test stand's cap to the stand's hydraulic rams began squeezing the tank. This test was performed to simulate the forces that a super heavy booster will encounter during flight. The test lasted approximately 6 hours from start to finish, and Booster 7.1 appears to have performed flawlessly throughout. The test tank was again stress tested on Thursday, July 21. However, due to the high internal pressure, the tank slightly buckled during the test. SpaceX might have increased the internal pressure above the safe level in order to determine the maximum stress the tank can withstand, which resulted in the buckling. This is the third time the test tank has been subjected to the so-called can crusher test. The first time Booster 7.1 was subjected to a structural stress test was on June 28. The Booster 7.1 test tank was specially designed by SpaceX to test the latest super heavy design changes. Please watch my previous video for more information on those design changes. Link in the description. Teams recently replaced a hydraulic actuator on the right arm of the rocket catching and stacking arm of the orbital launch tower. A hydraulic actuator on the left arm was replaced more than a week ago. SpaceX hinted in an FCC filing a few weeks ago that it might try to capture Super Heavy Booster 7 with launch tower arms during the orbital test flight. So, it appears that SpaceX is upgrading the tower arm to facilitate catching Booster 7. Work on the Starship launch tower and launch pad at Kennedy Space Center's Launch Complex 39A is moving quickly. Last Wednesday, the fourth section of the orbital launch tower was transported from SpaceX's operations area at Roberts Road to Pad 39A. Hours later, a crane lifted the fourth section and stacked it on top of the third section of the tower. 5 more sections are required to complete the 146-meter-tall orbital launch tower, and they are currently being prefabricated at Roberts Road. It looks like SpaceX is planning to build a second Starship launch tower, and the third overall, at Kennedy Space Center. The stub column, which connects the base of the launch tower to the first section of the tower, was recently spotted at Roberts Road. But it's currently not clear where this new tower will be located. With this, we have covered all the major updates from last week. Please share your thoughts on the latest science news and Starship updates in the comments section. Also, do not forget to subscribe to the channel for more weekly updates. And as always, thanks for watching.